Sundar Pichai was already famous all over the world. People knew him as the smart, calm, and hard-working man who led one of the biggest technology companies on the planet. He was a man who always dreamed big and worked even harder to make those dreams come true. But few people knew that deep inside, Sundar had a special place in his heart for his hometown, the simple streets where he grew up, and the small people who worked hard every day just to make ends meet. After years of success in the world of computers and software, Sundar wanted to do something different. He wanted to give back to the community that had shaped him. He wanted to create a place where people could find not only a good meal, but also hope and dignity. This is how the idea of opening a restaurant chain began. Not a flashy one with fancy decorations, but simple, warm places where families could come together and workers could have honest jobs. He did not want to be the boss who only sent money and never visited. Sundar wanted to understand the business from the ground up, so he decided to visit his restaurants quietly, without telling anyone who he really was. He wore simple clothes, didn't use the usual expensive car, and tried to blend in like any other customer. It was not easy for him because he was used to big meetings and people recognizing him everywhere. But this was different. This was personal. When Sundar entered his first restaurant one evening, he felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. The smell of cooked food, the chatter of customers, and the sounds of the kitchen brought back memories of simpler times. The restaurant was cozy and welcoming, with wooden tables and soft lighting. It was exactly how Sundar wanted it. Nothing too fancy, but very clean and comfortable. As he sat down quietly in a corner, he observed everything carefully. He noticed the servers moving quickly from table to table, smiling and taking orders. They worked hard, but with kindness. The kitchen staff were busy preparing food, shouting names of dishes, and making sure everything was perfect. Sundar saw children laughing with their parents, couples enjoying their dinner, and friends sharing stories. It made him happy. This was more than just a business. It was a place where people created memories. At the same time, Sundar noticed things he hadn't expected. Some servers looked tired. One woman was wiping sweat from her forehead. The day was long and the work was not easy. Sundar felt a sudden wave of respect for these workers who kept the restaurant running smoothly. They didn't have fancy titles or big salaries, but their work was important. He realized that their struggles and efforts were the real foundation of his new business. Every visit Sundar made was a chance to learn something new. He listened to customers' feedback, sometimes even talked to them about their experiences. But most importantly, he watched his employees closely. He wanted to see how they treated each other, how they handled difficult situations, and how the whole team worked together. It was like watching a small community inside the walls of the restaurant. Sundar kept these visits secret because he wanted the truth. He didn't want his employees to treat him differently or act in a way just because their boss was watching. He wanted to see their real reactions, the good and the bad. This was his way of understanding what was really happening in his restaurants, without filters. During these quiet visits, Sundar often found himself reflecting on his own journey. He remembered how, as a young boy, he had to work hard to study and improve his life. He knew what it meant to struggle and dream at the same time. Now, as a leader, he wanted to make sure others had better chances. The restaurants were not just places to eat. They were opportunities for people to build a better future. One evening, while watching from his corner table, Sundar felt a deep sense of pride mixed with responsibility. Pride because the restaurant was doing well and people were enjoying it. Responsibility because he knew there was still so much to do. Running a business was not just about numbers on a balance sheet. It was about people's lives, their hopes, their worries, and their dreams. In his mind, Sundar started planning how he could improve things even more. He thought about training programs to help employees learn new skills, ways to support them during hard times, and ideas to make the restaurant a place where everyone felt respected and valued. He wanted the chain to grow, But not just in size. He wanted it to grow in kindness and fairness. Even though Sundar was used to dealing with complicated technology and big decisions, this new project felt more personal. It made him more connected to his roots and the everyday lives of ordinary people. He found joy in the simple things: a warm smile from a server, a thank you from a customer, the sound of children laughing in the corner. These small moments meant more to him than any corporate achievement. Because he was there as a silent observer, Sundar also learned about the challenges his employees faced. Long hours, difficult customers, and the pressure to be perfect all the time. He saw that behind every smile was a story of effort and sometimes sacrifice. These visits opened his eyes to a world he had not fully understood before. As days passed, Sundar became more committed to this restaurant project. He would often talk quietly to his close team about the changes needed. Sometimes, late at night, he would write notes about ideas for improving working conditions or making the menu more appealing to local tastes. His mind was full of plans, but he always reminded himself to keep listening first. His secret visits continued for months. The employees never guessed who he really was, and Sundar liked it that way. He wanted to experience the truth, the honest moments of joy, struggle, and everything in between. This was his way of staying grounded, no matter how high he rose in the world. Sundar's story shows us that even great leaders need to step back and see the world through the eyes of others. Success is not just about money or fame. It is about understanding people, their needs, and their dreams. By quietly entering his own restaurants and blending in, Sundar learned more about humanity than any meeting or report could teach him. Through this humble beginning, Sundar Pichai planted a seed, not just for a business, but for a community where everyone could grow together. And it all started with him sitting quietly in a corner, watching, learning, and dreaming. One evening, Sundar Pichai decided to visit one of his restaurants again. He wanted to experience how things were running during a busy time and see if his team was managing well. He arrived quietly, wearing plain clothes and a cap to keep his face hidden. It was important for him to stay unnoticed. He chose a table in a corner where he could observe everything without being the center of attention. As usual, the smell of food cooking, the chatter of customers, and the clinking of plates created a lively and warm atmosphere. At first, everything seemed normal and smooth. The servers were moving quickly, taking orders with polite smiles, and the kitchen was humming with activity. Sundar enjoyed watching how the team worked together. But then, something unexpected happened. He noticed a young woman serving tables who suddenly stopped in the middle of taking an order. Her hands trembled slightly, and then he saw tears rolling down her cheeks. She tried to wipe them away quickly, but her face showed clear signs of sadness. For a moment, Sundar felt frozen. He had never seen anything like this in his restaurants before. Usually, the servers were busy and professional, but this moment was different. The woman looked overwhelmed, as if she was carrying a heavy burden no one else could see. Sundar's heart went out to her, but he wasn't sure what to do. Should he reveal himself and comfort her? Or should he respect her privacy and wait until she was ready to talk? He watched quietly as the woman stepped away from her tables and found a quiet corner in the restaurant. She sat down for a few minutes, still wiping her tears, trying to compose herself before returning to work. Sundar's mind raced with questions. What was making her so upset? Was it something about the job, or something in her life outside the restaurant? He realized that this moment was not just about one employee. It was a window into the struggles many people might be facing silently every day. After her shift ended, Sundar decided to approach her gently. He waited until the restaurant was quieter and the other staff had left or were preparing to go home. Sundar introduced himself quietly, not as the CEO everyone knew, but just as someone who cared. He asked her if she was okay, and if she wanted to talk about what was troubling her. At first, the young woman was hesitant. She was unsure why a stranger would care about her feelings or want to listen. But there was something in Sundar's calm and kind voice that made her feel safe. Slowly, she began to open up. She told him about the many challenges she faced. She worked long hours at the restaurant to support her family because her parents were not well and could not work. She had to pay for her younger siblings' education, and sometimes there wasn't enough money for even basic things at home. The pressure of balancing work and family problems was overwhelming, and on that day, everything had seemed too much to bear. Sundar listened carefully. He was deeply moved by her story. He realized that running a restaurant was not just about serving food. It was about understanding and supporting the people who made the service possible. The tears of that young server were a powerful reminder that behind every smile in his restaurants, there were real human stories, stories of struggle, hope, and resilience. As the young woman finished sharing, Sundar asked if there were ways the restaurant could help. She smiled faintly and said that sometimes just having someone to talk to made a big difference. She wished there were more understanding from management when employees faced tough times. Sundar promised to do whatever he could to make things better. This encounter changed Sundar's perspective. He realized that many of his employees might be going through similar difficulties, hidden from view during the busy work hours. He felt a strong responsibility not just to the business but to the people behind it. His heart was touched, and he knew that real success meant more than profits. It meant caring for his team as human beings. After that night, Sundar spent many hours thinking about how to support his employees better. He wanted the restaurants to be places where workers felt safe, valued, and supported, not just places to earn a paycheck. He began talking with his management team about ways to create programs for emotional support, flexible work schedules, and financial help during emergencies. Sundar also considered training managers to recognize when employees were struggling and how to respond with kindness and understanding. He started visiting the restaurants more often, but now not just as a secret observer. He made it clear that he wanted to listen to the staff's concerns and help in any way possible. His presence was encouraging, and slowly the employees began to trust him more. The atmosphere in the restaurant started to improve. People smiled more genuinely, and there was a stronger sense of teamwork and care. The young server who cried that day became a symbol of this new approach. She received support from the company, including some financial assistance and counseling services. She was able to continue working with more confidence, knowing that she was not alone. Her story inspired others to speak up and share their struggles, creating a culture of openness and empathy within the restaurants. Sundar's experience showed that sometimes the biggest lessons come from unexpected moments. A simple act of kindness and attention can make a huge difference in someone's life. For Sundar, seeing a server cry was not a sign of weakness but a call to action, a reminder that behind every business are people whose feelings and challenges deserve respect. This moment also taught Sundar about humility. Despite his high position and success, he was still learning and growing. Real leadership, he understood, meant being present, listening deeply, and acting with compassion. It was not about control or power, but about service and care. As days turned into weeks and months, Sundar's commitment to his employees only grew stronger. He worked hard to build a company culture where everyone felt valued. His leadership style changed to become more inclusive and human-centered. This transformation did not happen overnight, but it started with one quiet evening, one tearful server, and one man willing to see beyond the surface. This story reminds us that behind every smile in a restaurant, every job done well, there is a story waiting to be heard. Sundar Pichai's secret visit, and the moment he saw a server crying, teach us the power of empathy. They show us that success is not only about profits, but also about kindness and understanding. And sometimes, the greatest leaders are those who stop, listen, and care deeply about the people who make their dreams possible. After that quiet evening when Sundar Pichai had seen the young server crying, His mind was filled with many thoughts. The image of her tears stayed with him. It was a moment he never expected to face. Up until that point, he had thought of his restaurants mainly as successful businesses, places that brought food and jobs to the community. But now he understood there was much more beneath the surface. Behind every table, every dish served, and every smile there were stories. Real lives full of challenges, struggles, hopes, and dreams. Sundar wanted to know more. He wanted to understand what his employees went through every day. He knew the young server's story was just one of many. There had to be others who were also working hard, facing difficulties they kept hidden. This realization was powerful and humbling. Sundar understood that as a leader, it was his responsibility not only to grow the business, but also to care deeply about the people who made it possible. He started spending more time visiting the restaurants, but this time with a different goal. He no longer came just as a secret customer to observe service quietly. Now, he wanted to listen and learn from the employees themselves. He began having informal conversations with servers, cooks, cleaners, and managers. He asked simple questions like, "How are you doing? What challenges do you face? How can we help?" Slowly, people started opening up. Some were shy at first, not used to talking about their personal problems with their boss. But Sundar's genuine interest and kind way made them feel safe. They realized he cared, and that made a big difference. One by one, employees began sharing their stories. Sundar heard from a young father who worked long hours to support his wife and 2 children. He spoke about how hard it was to find time to be with his family and still earn enough to pay bills. Another employee shared how she was studying at night after her shifts, hoping to finish college and build a better life for herself. There were stories of parents who were sick, of siblings who depended on their income, and of personal battles with health or mental stress. Each story touched Sundar's heart. It became clear that many of his employees were not just workers. They were fighters, balancing work and life in difficult ways. Some worked multiple jobs, some cared for elderly relatives, and some struggled with loneliness. Sundar realized these realities shaped how they performed at work. When they were tired, worried, or stressed, it affected their ability to serve customers well and feel happy in their jobs. This new understanding deeply changed Sundar's view of his restaurants. He saw that managing a business was not only about profits and customer satisfaction. It was also about people's well-being, their emotional health, and their everyday challenges. The restaurant was like a small community where everyone needed support and respect. Sundar began thinking about how to help his employees better. He spoke with his management team about creating programs that could make a real difference. One idea was to offer flexible work hours, so employees could better manage family emergencies or personal needs. Another was to introduce counseling, services where people could talk to professionals about their stress and emotions without fear or shame. He also wanted to start a hardship fund, a small pool of money to help employees during tough times, like when someone in their family was sick or there was an unexpected expense. Sundar believed that even a little financial help could ease a heavy burden and give someone hope to keep going. To make these ideas real, Sundar didn't just rely on reports or meetings. He visited his restaurants often to talk directly with employees and managers, encouraging them to share feedback honestly. He made sure that the support programs were easy to access and confidential, so no one would feel embarrassed or afraid to ask for help. The young server who had cried during her shift became a symbol of this change. Sundar made sure she received the help she needed, both emotional and financial support. She was grateful and surprised that the owner of the company cared so much about her well-being. Her confidence grew, and she became a leader among the staff, helping others who faced similar struggles. Sundar's efforts did not stop at just helping individuals. He started working on building a culture of empathy and kindness within the company. He encouraged managers to listen more carefully and be patient with their teams. He introduced training sessions on emotional intelligence so leaders could better understand and support their employees. He also emphasized teamwork and respect. Sundar believed that when people felt valued and cared for, they would be more motivated and happy at work. This would lead to better service for customers and a stronger, healthier business overall. The changes were not easy or quick. Some managers resisted at first, thinking that business was only about efficiency and profits. But Sundar patiently explained that taking care of people was the foundation for long-term success. He shared stories from his visits and personal conversations, showing how much difference kindness could make. Over time, the atmosphere in the restaurants began to shift. Employees smiled more often and supported each other during busy times. They felt safer sharing their problems and asking for help. Customers noticed the positive energy, and many said they loved coming to the restaurant because it felt warm and welcoming. Sundar also saw that by investing in his employees' well-being, the business grew stronger. Turnover rates dropped because people wanted to stay longer. Training became more effective because employees were more engaged and eager to learn. Productivity improved because the teams worked better together. Sundar understood that his restaurants were not just places to eat. They were communities where people could grow and thrive. This experience was a lesson in leadership for Sundar. He learned that true leaders do not only focus on profits and numbers. They focus on people, their needs, their emotions, and their dreams. Leadership means being present, listening deeply, and acting with kindness and care. Sundar's journey showed that even the smallest acts of understanding can have a big impact. It was not about grand gestures but about everyday compassion. From listening to a crying server to building support programs, every step mattered. The story of Sundar and his employees reminds us all that behind every business, there are human stories. It is easy to forget this when we see success and achievements. But the true heart of any company is the people who work there. Sundar's experience teaches us that success is not just about making money or reaching goals. It is about lifting others up, sharing kindness, and creating a place where everyone feels valued. His story encourages leaders everywhere to look beyond profits and focus on the well-being of their teams. In the end, Sundar's journey was not just about a restaurant chain. It was about understanding life, empathy, and the power of human connection. It was about realizing that sometimes the greatest lessons come from the most unexpected moments: a single tear, a quiet conversation, and a decision to care. After the young server's story and the changes Sundar Pichai began to bring to his restaurants, things started to shift in ways he hadn't fully expected. His visits became more frequent, but now they were different. He wasn't just watching, quietly from a corner. He was actively involved. Sundar wanted to make sure the new ideas and programs he had introduced were working well and truly helping the employees. He believed that real change needed constant attention and care, not just one-time actions. One evening, Sundar arrived at the restaurant during a very busy time. The place was full of customers, the kitchen was bustling, and the servers were rushing from table to table. Sundar looked around and smiled quietly. He could see the energy and excitement in the air. It felt alive, a place where many stories and emotions mixed together. But even in the busy noise, Sundar kept his eyes open for the small moments: the tired smile of a server, the grateful look of a customer, the teamwork happening behind the scenes. As he sat at a table, Sundar noticed a young man who was working as a server. The young man's face looked serious, almost worried, as he moved carefully between tables. Sundar saw that this server was new and seemed a little unsure of himself. When the server passed by Sundar's table, Sundar called him gently and asked how he was doing. The young man hesitated, but then smiled nervously and said he was okay. Sundar invited him to sit for a moment after his shift ended. When the restaurant quieted down later that night, the young man joined Sundar at a table and they began to talk. The young man shared his story. He had recently moved to the city from a small village. He was trying to build a new life, away from his family, in hopes of finding better opportunities. But it was not easy. The city was big and confusing, and he often felt lonely and lost. He missed his family and struggled to adjust to the fast pace of city life. Sundar listened carefully. He understood how difficult it was to start over in a new place. Many people faced similar challenges, and he wanted to do something to help. He reassured the young man that he was not alone, and that the restaurant was more than just a job. It could be a community. Sundar promised to help him feel more supported and connected. Inspired by this conversation, Sundar began thinking about how the company could do more to help new employees, especially those coming from rural areas or smaller towns. He realized that moving to a big city for work was a big change and could be very difficult without support. Many of his employees had stories like this young man's, stories of courage, hope, and sometimes fear. Sundar decided to create a special welcoming program for new employees. This program would help them adjust to the city and their new jobs. It included simple things like providing information about public transport, housing options, and local services. It also offered mentoring, where experienced employees would help newcomers feel comfortable and guide them through the first few weeks. Sundar believed that by helping new employees settle in, the company could reduce their stress and make them feel more at home. He knew that when people feel supported and valued, they work better and are happier. The welcoming program was designed not just to help with work, but to build friendships and a sense of belonging. The program was a success. New employees reported feeling less scared and more confident. The mentoring relationships became strong bonds that helped people face challenges together. Sundar visited these sessions often and enjoyed seeing people share their stories and support each other. But Sundar didn't stop there. He also wanted to create opportunities for growth and learning within the company. He remembered how education had changed his own life and how important it was to keep learning. Sundar believed that giving employees chances to improve their skills would not only help the business but also empower the individuals. He worked with trainers to develop courses on customer service, communication, and leadership. These courses were offered during work hours and were free for all employees. Sundar encouraged everyone to take part, no matter their role or background. The training helped employees feel more confident and prepared. It also created a culture of growth and ambition. One employee who benefited greatly was a young woman who had started as a cleaner but dreamed of becoming a manager one day. She took the training seriously and worked hard. Sundar noticed her progress and gave her more responsibilities. Over time, she became a respected leader in the restaurant. Her success inspired many others to believe in themselves and their dreams. Sundar's focus on growth was not just about skills, but also about building character. He wanted his employees to feel proud of their work and their place in the company. He often told them that everyone mattered, from the cooks to the servers to the cleaners. Each person's role was important, and together they created something special. The culture of respect and support spread throughout the restaurants. Sundar saw how it improved teamwork and made the workplace more enjoyable. Employees who once felt invisible now felt seen and appreciated. They supported each other through hard days and celebrated successes together. Sundar also understood the importance of listening. He continued his secret visits occasionally, but now he combined them with open conversations. He created suggestion boxes where employees could share ideas or concerns anonymously. He personally read many of these suggestions and made changes based on the feedback. One day, an employee suggested adding a quiet room for breaks where staff could rest or meditate during busy shifts. Sundar thought this was a wonderful idea and quickly arranged for such a space. This small change made a big difference, giving employees a peaceful place to recharge. Sundar's leadership style had evolved into something rare and valuable. He was no longer just the CEO who made big decisions from a distance. He had become a leader who cared deeply listened carefully, and acted kindly. His employees respected and admired him not only for his success, but for his heart. Customers also noticed the difference. The restaurants felt warmer and more welcoming. The staff were friendlier and more attentive. People returned again and again because the atmosphere was special. They sensed that this was a place where people cared, not just about food but about each other. The success of Sundar's restaurants showed that kindness and business could go hand in hand. Profit and care were not enemies but partners. Sundar proved that a company could grow and thrive by focusing on people first. Sundar's journey was a powerful example for other leaders. It showed that leadership is not just about power or money. It is about understanding, empathy, and building community. True leaders see the human stories behind every role and every task. The story of Sundar and his restaurants reminds us that behind every business are people with dreams and struggles. When leaders listen and care, they create places where everyone can grow and succeed. This chapter of Sundar's story teaches us about the power of welcome, support, and growth. It encourages us to reach out to others, especially those starting new journeys. It reminds us that small acts of kindness can change lives. Sundar's vision was clear: a company where everyone mattered, where everyone could belong, and where every story was valued. His journey showed that success is sweeter when shared, and that leadership shines brightest when it lifts others up. After many months of hard work, thoughtful listening, and gentle changes, Sundar Pichai's restaurants had transformed in ways that even he hadn't fully imagined at the beginning. What started as a simple secret visit to check on his business turned into a deep journey of discovery, empathy, and real change, not just for the company but for the people who made it alive every day. Sundar often thought back to that night, when he saw the young server crying. That moment had been a turning point, a quiet wake-up call that made him see the restaurant and his employees differently. Now, as the leader of a growing business, he realized that true success was not measured only by profits or the number of customers but by the happiness and well-being of the people behind the scenes. One of the most important lessons Sundar learned was that leadership meant being present and approachable. Over time, he had developed a habit of visiting his restaurants without announcements. Sometimes he would come in plain clothes, sit quietly, and observe. Other times, he would speak openly with employees, sharing stories and learning from them. This balance helped him stay connected and reminded everyone that their voices mattered. The changes he had put in place were making a real difference. The employee support programs were being used regularly. The mentoring system had grown stronger, and many employees said it helped them feel less alone and more confident in their work. The hardship fund had been a lifeline for several families, during tough times, offering peace of mind when emergencies struck. Sundar's focus on training and personal growth had also created many success stories. Employees who had once been shy or uncertain were now taking on leadership roles. They were proud to work for a company that believed in their potential and invested in their future. One story that touched Sundar's heart was about the young woman who started as a cleaner and became a restaurant manager. She had worked hard, attended training sessions, and showed great leadership skills. Her journey inspired many other employees, proving that with support and determination, dreams could come true. Sundar often invited her to share her story during company meetings to motivate others. The atmosphere in the restaurants was different, too. Customers noticed the positive energy. The staff were more cheerful and welcoming, and the teamwork was evident. When employees felt valued, it showed in their work. Sundar was proud to see his vision come alive in these simple but powerful ways. Despite these successes, Sundar never stopped learning or improving. He knew that caring for people was an ongoing process. Every person's needs were unique, and the company had to stay flexible and open to change. Sundar continued to ask for feedback and was willing to make adjustments whenever necessary. One day, during a visit to a restaurant in a smaller city, Sundar met an older employee who had worked there for many years. The man shared stories about the restaurant's early days, and how much it had grown. He also spoke about the challenges faced by employees who were aging and worried about their futures. Sundar listened carefully and realized that his support programs needed to include planning for long-term well-being, including retirement advice and healthcare support. Sundar acted quickly, working with his team to develop new benefits for senior employees. This included health checkups, financial planning workshops, and even lighter work schedules for those who needed it. These steps showed that the company cared for employees at every stage of their lives. Throughout this journey, Sundar's own life was enriched by the stories and friendships he made. He found joy in small moments, a grateful smile, a shared laugh, a story of success. These moments reminded him why he started the business and what truly mattered. Sundar's experience became an example for others in the business world. Many leaders heard his story and were inspired to think differently about their employees and company cultures. Sundar often spoke at conferences and events, sharing his lessons about empathy, listening, and kindness. He encouraged others to look beyond profits and build workplaces where people could thrive. He also wrote about his experiences in articles and interviews, hoping to reach a wider audience. His message was clear: businesses that care for their people create stronger, more successful, and happier companies. Leadership is not about power. It is about service. The transformation in Sundar's restaurants showed that even small actions, like noticing a crying employee or listening carefully, could spark big changes. It taught that success is not just about achieving goals, but about lifting others up along the way. In the end, Sundar's journey was a story of hope and humanity. It was about seeing the unseen struggles behind everyday smiles, understanding that every person has a story worth hearing, and choosing to care deeply. The young server who cried on that quiet night was no longer just a moment in time. She became a symbol of change, a reminder that kindness and attention can create ripples far beyond one small act. Sundar Pichai's secret visits, his conversations with employees, and his commitment to care transformed his restaurants into more than just places to eat. They became communities where people belonged, where they were valued, and where dreams could grow. This story teaches us all that true leadership is about heart. It reminds us to look closely at the people around us, to listen with empathy, and to act with kindness. Because behind every job, every smile, and every business, there are human stories waiting to be understood and respected. Sundar's journey shows that when we care for each other, we build something greater than just a company. We build a family, a community, and a future full of hope.